Okay guys, so for today in this video, I want to talk mostly about the idea of the inner child and integrating the inner child. I think two big, very influential philosophers, psychologists fundamentally, big thinkers of the 20th century, tapped into this with regards to becoming self-improved, individuated and more whole in our own lives, which is Jung and Nietzsche. And Nietzsche talks about in the Three Metamorphoses, becoming the child, going from I think it's the camel, the lion, and to the child. And this is probably one of his most crucial kind of realizations, I think, within most of his work. Because as he says, the child is innocence and forgetfulness, a new beginning, a game, a self-propelling wheel, a first motion, a sacred yes. And I think this is very relevant towards self-improvement, because I think most, within the ideas of Jungian shadow work and repressing that in which we avoid from ourselves, I think most of it is rooted within childhood trauma in which we repress from ourselves, or in which is even that which we do not even want to be we don't want to confront really, because we want to kind of hide away from ourselves. I think most main themes within shadow work come from that. So I want to kind of go into this a little bit, because I think, a lot of people talk about shadow work and all of this type of stuff and becoming, more whole, to individuate, to be more self-improved as an individual. I think most of it is rooted within becoming more aware of that in which we repress within ourselves from our past experiences, and being more observant of these things and developing self-awareness of ourselves and of our past. So, of course, Nietzsche identified the child as what should be the final metamorphosis of all human souls, spirits in this life. That life is at its best when we finally embody the characteristics of the child. To be of complete innocence, forgetfulness, playfulness, and to embrace life with a sacred yes of spontaneity and play. So, with this idea of the child, the reason why it is the pinnacle point of existence is because, obviously, when we were a child, we can remember, existence was and euphoric. It was very enjoyable to just play and to be in the presence of nature and to enjoy life as it came about, and the child itself is not, the reason why the child is so symbolic is because it is not rooted or is not stuck in the past or the future, and most people are living in the past or the future. This is the thing, and this is where you get the more common kind of symbol of the NPC. The NPC is stuck in the past or the future. The kind of, the adult who is, trapped within, obviously working towards that which is in the future of their future self through stresses of the modern world, or someone who is very much stuck in the past, which they cannot escape, or they are kind of stuck in traumatic experiences in which they cannot remove themselves from. But the child is obviously always existent in the present moment. They live through presence with themselves in the real world in real time. And this is probably one of Nietzsche's most important realizations, for the one thing that holds everyone back from becoming who we truly are is the integration of our inner child and facing childhood trauma. For childhood trauma is the bedrock of what exists within the shadow of the psyche, I believe. Once this is confronted and integrated over time, the final metamorphosis of the child starts to begin, and life truly starts to become complete and embraced with complete joy. Because we become existent within the present moment, and we are not stuck in the past or the future. It should be our goal in life to overcome the pools of all duality and reach synthesis between duality itself, to find balance. For the child's life of bliss and joy lives only in the present moment, as I'm saying, not attached to the past or future. This is where life should be experienced the most, yet most of us are anxiously living either in the past or the future, where our needs are never met or desires ever reached. Society, the social order of the Western world or the Eastern world, wherever it is, of corporatism, is pushing us towards a specific goal all the time, or we are trying to get out of debt from the systems that are in place, or we are trying to overcome, the stresses of a mortgage, or we are trapped within financial systems, all of this, which causes us to be stuck in the past and the future, as just one example. This is because we have not integrated the inner child but are living in a state of existential adulthood that has been created from the impatient demands of social order within society. Being capable of internally observing the trauma of childhood is the first step, I believe, to integrating and finding union with the inner child, but also developing a strong ability to know thyself and what has influenced our character from growing up, what has conditioned our character, because childhood is such a influential moment in our lives when it comes to learning, when it comes to metacognition. We absorb so much when we're a child, and those things in which we absorb become conditionings in which we need to be aware of and to observe retrospectively within ourselves. It is also the first step to truly integrating the shadow as well. Most shadow content originates from the experiences and conditionings of early childhood, because nothing is very balanced within childhood when we are growing up, which makes our, childhood experience very unique, because it is usually, oftentimes very polarized, and obviously parents being it their first experience of being a parent, it's very difficult. You can't really prepare for parenthood, and being a parent, you just have to do your very best. Most shadow content, as I was saying, originates from the experiences and conditions of early childhood. For there is a period of time in our lives of hypersensitive cognitive learning that plays the most amount of influence over our preconceptions, especially when we do not. The thing is, because they become our preconceptions, if we do not observe them from a perspective of self-awareness, and to actually really look at our childhood experiences, then our preconceptions never become questioned. And therefore we get obviously trapped within the conditionings of our childhood experiences or childhood traumas. And this is where we need to tap into those to really kind of break open the possibilities of how we can become more integrated as an individual. Because of this, we can merge childhood trauma and shadow work together. Childhood trauma falls into 3 emotional categories, which can also be 3 categories of the shadow. These categories, I believe, are guilt, neglect, confidence. For example, if you experienced a lot of neglect when you were younger, you are much more likely to experience within yourself or within ourselves, becoming very easily angry. Uncertainty becomes something that's extremely bothering, because, if we're neglected, we don't have a foundation of support and kind of awareness of what is to be. Guidance is very much missing, parental guidance. So, becoming easily angry is definitely a symptom of something like that, neglect. Having low self-esteem, not having guidance, not having someone to lead the way or to show how to be, how to be courageous in the world and to act with courage. Suppressing emotion is also another one, because, if we are neglected, then we have no bearing of who we can express that emotion towards. Afraid not to become sensitive, attaches to people, sometimes even in childhood, maybe you become friends with people who show a lack of appreciation towards you or even emotional support for you. Now, confidence is another one. And this can be kind of symptomatic of, afraid of getting hurt. Again, low self-esteem, always finding ways to not trust others. Feelings of unsafety, yearning for external confirmation. And again, like attracting people with feelings of unsafety, kind of maybe, if you're not encouraged to be a kind of like a courageous individual, or you're not kind of encouraged to be a confident person, then you might merge with people who kind of represent the antithesis of confidence, or maybe kind of people who are a bit more kind of anarchistic when you're kind of growing up and kind of becoming part of the, the bad boy group of the school or something like this, and people who don't really people who kind of want to go against the status quo, and like kind of when you can think of growing up in the education system, this is very relevant for me as well, because I would merge with I would develop friends with people who were kind of a bit more kind of boisterous, more kind of wanting to kind of create or kind of break things down within a school system or something like this, and promote more unsafety and being more anarchistic than because a large part of that is probably because those children at the time, no teacher probably identified what they were talented at to reinforce confidence within themselves, which causes something like that to happen. Now, another one is guilt. Feeling pity or bad in relation to oneself, does not want to ask for things, uses guilt to handle situations, afraid of setting limits, so afraid of setting boundaries, because, maybe they were growing up and there's a situation where they're made to feel guilty by their parents, and therefore, setting limits or setting boundaries might be something that's oh, I don't really want to do that, because maybe you don't really know where you're at with that type of stuff. Maybe because you'd feel bad for, for setting kind of, just purely just boundaries. Not wanting to ask for things as well, because, a sense of feeling guilty in relation to doing that, or for asking for help from someone else could also be representative of something like that. And then again, usually attracts people that make other people feel guilty too, even possibly. So all of these character traits become kind of like coping methods developed in response to the childhood trauma, which hides away the reality, experience, memory of the trauma we do not want to face, or of our past experiences, but also blocks out the process and ability of being able to recognize and integrate the inner child to finally reach peace and tranquility with ourselves. So there's a lot to unwrap within this, and what I want to do for another video is kind of go into the trinity of the shadow. So it's kind of like a 3-part system and kind of like a triangle structure, where it goes into more the guilt, confidence and neglect aspects of maybe childhood trauma, and how that seeps into a more deeper kind of framework with regards to preconditionings in relation to characteristics and behaviors which can represent the unintegrated shadow or the repression of these things. So that's something I want to go into on another video, because I think childhood trauma, childhood experiences, conditionings are fundamentally linked to things of repression and shadow work, or that it's fundamentally linked to shadow work of which is that of becoming more aware of that in which we have hidden from ourselves, hidden from our past experiences, things that we don't want to look at with detail and to integrate in a healthy way of understanding ourselves and the experiences we went through in the past. So if you enjoyed this video, guys, make sure to give it a like, comment your thoughts down below with relations to this type of stuff. Do you feel like, shadow work in relation to childhood trauma is linked or not? Give me your thoughts on all of that. And of course, if you want to do any kind of one-on-one work, if you want to talk to me directly about things of this nature when it comes down to, procrastination, self-development, overcoming bad habits, even elements of kind of shadow work, because I want to get into doing more of that with people when it comes to becoming more self-aware, working through things that they want to develop confidence in, then book in a free one-on-one call with me down below. You'll see a link on the top of the description. And with that said, guys, I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll speak to you in the next one.